Today I'm going to show you how to do a full setup on a Floyd Rose guitar. Now typically you will only need to do a full setup if you're changing string gauges, changing the tuning of the guitar, or you've recently acquired a guitar that the Floyd Rose has been improperly set up. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the intonation adjustment today because there's a video up above that shows the entire intonation adjustment process on a Floyd Rose bridge. So let's get started. So on this particular guitar, I'm going to be changing not only the tuning of the guitar, but I'm going with a little bit heavier gauge string. So that's going to put a different tension on the bridge. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments to the spring claw in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and take the cover off the back so that I have access to the springs. Like so. Next, I'm going to be using a trem block by Shredneck to place underneath the bridge so that I can loosen the strings up and the bridge will stay in a relatively stable location. Now, any of the tools that I use in the video, there will be links in the description down below. So feel free to check those out and get any of the tools you might need. Next, we're going to loosen and remove the 3 locking clamps on the nut with a 3mm T-handle Allen wrench. Just make sure any of the parts that you pull off your guitar, set them in a safe location so that you're not losing them. And then hitting up StewMac or Amazon for replacement parts. Now, because the tremolo is already blocked off, I can go ahead and loosen my strings. Using a string winder here, which there's a link in the description for it. They're only a couple of bucks. If you don't have one already, I would highly recommend getting one. And you'll notice my strings, I have the end ball up here at the tuning post, and I'll explain why I do that once I get the guitar restrung. Now you might notice that the guitar is sitting on this nifty little mat here that has this neck cradle made by Music Nomad. I tell you, if you're going to be doing any kind of work on your guitar from time to time, this little mat and cradle really come in handy. There's a link in the description for it. Next, I'm going to take my 3mm Allen wrench and I'm going to loosen the bolts in the back of the saddle here to remove the strings. Just need to be careful that if you flip the guitar over, these little blocks that are in each saddle, some of them could fall out, and that could be a problem if you don't notice it and you don't see where it falls. You could lose them. Now this guitar is also kind of on the older side. This is a 1989 Charvel. So some of these little blocks here are kind of wedged in the saddle. So even though I've loosened these bolts up, I'm going to have to take a tool to kind of loosen up the blocks here. Now I can pull my strings through the tuning posts. Also use this opportunity to get some of the dust off the peg head here. Now I'm going to tune the guitar down a half step to E flat tuning, and normally I use 9-gauge strings, but I want to try 10s to maybe see if they kind of compensate for the lighter tuning tension. And I'm just using D'Addario XL nickel wound strings, but any brand of string that is your favorite will work just fine. So I mentioned a little while ago that my strings were backwards, where I had the end ball down here at the tuning post. The reason why I do that is then I just have to cut a little off the end of the string to go into the saddle block. So I'll feed the string through from the tuning post and keep my hand on it. Feed it through like so. And I'm going to work with 2 strings at a time. These Diodarys are wound together as pairs. So do the 6th and the 5th strings first. We'll come down to the bridge and then trim off the excess and attach them. So down here at the bridge, I've learned just from the last 30 years of working with Floyd Rose, it's actually closer to 35 years that I've been playing Floyd Rose bridge guitars, that if I pull the string tight and then take some wire cutters, there'll be a link in the description for trusty little pair of wire cutters. If I go about an inch past the fine tuner knob, cut that off, that's about the right amount of string that I want to wrap around the tuning post. So I'm going to go ahead and feed this into the saddle block and then tighten it down. Now remember, when you're tightening these bolts, don't over tighten, because I've actually stripped these before. And then of course, Home Depot does not have those parts on hand. And we'll do the same thing for our 5th string. Sometimes you might need to make a little adjustments with your block. As long as you can pull up on them and they don't slip out, they're tight enough. So far we're just in the restringing phase, and we're not at the setup yet. So let's get it restrung. And the way I restring these, as in my previous videos, I keep tension on the string so that my wraps spiral downward. And then I'll kind of pull on it, make sure it's nice and snug around the tuning post. And when I do this, I tend to get about 2 winds of string around the tuning post. And we know it's not going to slip out of tune because we've got that end ball right there preventing the string from going anywhere. Now we can do the 5th string. Now you'll notice on that one I got about 3 winds around it, and that's okay. Now we go to the 4th and 3rd strings. Still removing about an inch off the end of the string, an inch past the fine tuning knob. Now on the bass strings, you definitely don't want that many wraps around the post at the tuner because there's just not enough room, and then it starts to get unsightly. But on your treble strings, the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, you've got a little bit more leeway to get more windings around the tuning post. There we go. Let's wind these 2 strings up. Just make sure when you're turning these that your end balls stay above each string wrap. They might try to get snagged on it until you've wrapped a couple windings around each post. Now remember, we're not trying to tune it up or get too much tension on the strings yet. We're just trying to get it restrung, and then we can start adjusting our tremolo springs and start working on tuning it. Let's get our 1st and 2nd strings on. Trim excess off. And finally the 1st string. Now on the 1st and 2nd string, because this is a 6 and a line peg head, I'll sometimes go a little bit more than an inch just to compensate for the extra length of the string. And plus you've got a smaller diameter wire, which will allow you to put more windings around each post. There we go. And just wrap up the last 2 strings. In my first, second, and third strings, it's not uncommon that I'll have 4 or 5 windings around each tuning post. So at this point, the guitar is fully restrung, and now I'm going to stretch the strings, and then we'll start working with tuning it, and then seeing how far out the bridge is from where we need it to be. Go ahead and remove the trem block. And right now it's sitting pretty level, but the guitar is not in tune yet. So we'll come down to the peg head, and I've just got a clip-on tuner here that I'm going to use. Now typically when you're tuning a guitar, you don't want to do it with it horizontal or laying flat like this, because it can change the tuning. You always want to tune the guitar in an upright position, like you were sitting down with it or standing with it to tune it. This is just to get us in the ballpark here. So I need D sharp. And I need G sharp. I need C sharp. Remember, I'm tuning this guitar down a half step. Need F sharp for this one. Just trying to get it in the ballpark. I need A sharp here. I'm going to go through them again because we've changed the tension on the strings, which is going to change the tension on the bridge. Actually, on this 6th string, I want to tune it down to C sharp. So I'm in a drop tuning for the 6th string, a whole step down from the tuning of the guitar. And I need to take that into consideration as I'm tuning this thing and then setting up the Floyd Rose for that. All right, at this point, we want to take a look at the bridge and see how far off it is. Okay, if we look at the bridge, we can see that it's elevated in the rear. Ideally, the bridge should be, the base of it should run parallel to the top of the guitar, meaning that it's flat. That provides the most range of motion and the best intonation response with the guitar. So we're going to need to tighten the spring claw in the back, and then we're going to have to check the tuning again, and we'll have to go back and forth with that until we get the tremolo stabilized based on the tuning that we're looking for. Just on a side note also, if you needed to raise or lower the action, you can do so with using an Allen wrench on the studs here by turning them clockwise to lower them or counterclockwise to raise them. I would just say that on older Ibanez guitars, within the tremolo stud, there is a small Allen set screw that runs all the way down into it. It acts as a locking screw to provide more tuning stability. So just make sure before you try to tighten or loosen early Ibanez edge and low pro edge tremolos that you loosen the tension on those set screws inside with a smaller Allen wrench. So let's flip this over and tighten these up some. And because I don't know how far they're going to have to go, I'm just going to turn each one of these in a few turns and make sure you're doing them even, so that the edge of the front edge of the claw sits parallel with the front edge of the cavity. Now I'm going to check my tuning again. Now remember, I wanted a drop C sharp here, or D flat. And I anticipated that most of these would probably be sharp because I tightened the spring claw. And then I just kind of keep going back and forth, checking the angle of the tremolo. Well, I can still see that it's slightly elevated in the rear, so I'm going to make some more adjustments to it. Let's give it a few more turns. And if I need a little bit more tension, I can move these outer springs to the inward claw hooks here to give it a little bit more tension. And we just keep repeating this process until we get the tremolo stabilized with our intended tuning, as well as a flat tremolo base plate parallel to the top of the body. Now I can already see I'm getting closer. Right there, we're almost completely level, if not already, right there at the top of the tremolo to the body. And if you can see that there, it's almost perfectly parallel. So the only things left to do at this point are just to tune it up and make any last minute fine-tuning adjustments to the spring claw and the tremolo, and then play it. Hey, if you found value in this video, consider subscribing to my channel and check out some of my other videos. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Keep rocking on.